Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. Our reading today comes from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. For it is as if a man going on a journey summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded with them, and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had the 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came, and he settled accounts with them. The one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, and saying, Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, and I have made 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one with the 2 talents also came forward, saying, Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, Master, I knew that you are a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid. And I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. But his master replied, You wicked and lazy slave. You knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him, and give it to the one with 10 talents. For to all those who have more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The Gospel of the Lord. Today is part 2 of our series called How to Be Strong in a Shaken World. I read about a man whose wife was feeling down, so he took her to a psychiatrist. The doctor talked to her for quite a while and diagnosed her as having low self-esteem and being starved for affection. That was the reason she was sad. So he said to the husband, Let me show you what will heal your wife. He got up and he grabbed the woman, and he gave her the biggest and longest kiss the husband had ever seen. The doc said, She needs that every day, and if she gets it, she will be healed. The husband said, Doc, that's terrific, but I think I can only bring her to you twice a week. Many people are having a hard time right now. And last week, I talked about some of the basics that really can help us. Get a little bit more rest, get out in nature a bit more by water or by a forest. And the really big one, renew our minds with Jesus' ideas for life. Today, I want to look at more specific ways we can tune in with God's ideas for healthy living. And admittedly, some of these ideas run contrary to our human nature. I saw an interesting study in the Journal of Science where researchers took a group of 46 people. They gave some of them $20 bills, they gave some of them $50 bills. They divided them into 2 different groups. One group, they asked to spend the money on themselves. The other group, they asked to spend the money on other people. Overwhelmingly, in a self-reported happiness factor when they were done, the people who had the greatest happiness were those who had spent money on other people. Now here's why I think this is true. When you and I were created in the image of God, His very nature, we were given within ourselves a delight in giving because it reflects the nature of God. Martin Luther once said, "If you have exceptional gifts, you should know that God gave you these talents in order to serve others with them, so that God may be praised through Jesus." Today's text is all about exceptional gifts. And oddly enough, much of what will get us through the hard times has everything to do with giving. Having an outward focus is so vital to finding strength in hard times. And if you are like me, when times get tough, my first and most natural reaction is to circle the wagons and get defensive. It is not to reach out. And yet, in a time of great need, in fact, right now, in this time of need that surrounds us all, it is you and I that are called to step forward and give. Now, today's reading can be viewed as kind of dismal. Any text that ends with the line, "There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth," isn't exactly feel-good material. Some biblical scholars have referred to this as the strangest, darkest, harshest story Jesus ever tells. So perhaps you're wondering, how's that going to help us today? It will. Stick with me. Let's take a look at this as more of a wake-up call, as more of a reminder about embracing these incredible gifts that God has given us, and even viewing these tough times and the strange things that we're going through in life as opportunities for God to use us in incredible ways to help the people around us. In addition, may we see in this story the way to enter into the joy of our Master, as the parable itself says. Just this week, I talked with Amy, our youth director here at the church. The youth group on Wednesday night packed boxes for Operation Christmas Child. She said it was one of their very best nights ever. My daughter, who is a part of this group, said the exact same thing. It is in our giving to others that we find our greatest joy. When Jesus was telling this story, most of the people were very, very poor. Wealth was concentrated in just a few rich families. This story is about those rich households. The master we meet gathers together 3 of his key employees, and he delegates responsibilities. In this case, the responsibilities have everything to do with money, vast sums of money. The master gives the first servant 5 talents, the second servant 2, and the third servant 1. Now, a talent was an expression for a sum of money that was worth 15 years' wages. 15 years' wages. So imagine these 3 servants, who most likely lived day by day. Imagine them seeing or even imagining this much money. This master was obviously a very high roller, and he picks these 3 servants, and he trusts them to help out with his house. And then he goes away. Now, this is the chance of a lifetime for these servants. It is a defining moment in their lives. Up until now, these workers have probably led very routine, predictable lives as yes men. But now, in a matter of moments, everything changes. We read that the first servant immediately takes the bull by the horns. If he does well with this task, it could open up all kinds of opportunities in his future. The second reacts the same way, jumping at the chance to take action. But the third servant takes the greatest gift he has ever been given, and he buries it in the ground. He lets the what-ifs hold him back. What if I take a risk and I lose the money? What if somebody steals it? What if things just don't pan out the way that I had hoped? This guy views burying the money as a safer and better option. Now, I think part of us can probably relate very well to this third servant. These what-ifs, these methods of protecting ourselves, well, they can easily hold us back from living full lives, can't they? Right now, in this time and place in which we are living, this third servant mentality is taking a hold. Really, it is a fear that stops life. Really, it is fear that stops joy in life as well. And it is fear that holds everything back. What ifs can stop what could be's? And today I ask all of us to find renewed boldness in our generosity and in our lives. When the needs are the greatest, as they very well may be right now, this is actually the time when we are called to step forward if we are able. But back to our parable. We're told that after a long time, the master returns to settle up with his servants. The first 2 servants have doubled their money, and they receive praise. But the third servant, look out. The master comes down hard on him, really hard. Because in his eyes, this servant did nothing with what he was given. So how does the story relate to us today? I mean, in place of these monetary gifts described in this parable, let's think about our lives in terms of our Master, our God, and the gifts that He has given us. Think about our minds and our abilities and our spiritual gifts, our finances, our bodies, our time. And God gives each of us different gifts. And He chooses our gifts with care. Each of us created in unique ways, wired in ways that no one will ever be quite like us again. And it is up to each of us to decide what we will do with these gifts that God has given to us. We all give our lives to something. And the question is, between the day we are born and the day that we die, what will we give ourselves to? Now, if you look at this story, there are 2 different motivators behind these characters. The servants who excel do so because they love their master and they want to please him. When you love someone, your life revolves around them. Even your schedule changes to revolve around them. Almost everything changes. Love makes dramatic changes in your life. And that's what it means to be motivated by love. You are willing to take a risk, to change the things around you, and to welcome the other into your life. But the servant that does not do anything with his talents is motivated out of fear. He says, I knew you were a hard man. Does not appear to love his master. And he is doing as little as possible to get by. He is most interested in his self-preservation. He doesn't want to mess things up. He is not going to take a chance. Which of these two motivators do you think is currently driving you? Which of the characters in this parable are you most like? Now, if you find yourself feeling like the third servant, you are not alone. I know this. I am hearing from many people about how insecure everyone currently feels about the things that are swirling around us. And fear is a completely normal reaction for many of us right now. So here is what I am calling you to. The opposite. Courage, risk, boldness, and generosity. Now, these things lived out, oddly enough, bring joy into your life. Long ago, I discovered Corrie ten Boom. And you may remember her book called The Hiding Place from many years ago. I lived in Amsterdam several years ago, and I took a train from Amsterdam to Haarlem, which was her hometown. You can still see her father's clock shop there. And her story is one where she and her family stood up to the Nazis. They hid Jews in their house, and they were caught, and they paid a very heavy price. Concentration camps for all of them, and Corrie is the only one in her family that lived. It is probably fair to say that her life and times were incredibly challenging. And somehow this remarkable woman remained one of the strongest pillars of faith that I have ever run across. How did she stand strong in such a shaken world? Her faith. Her faith was front and center. I'd like you to hear some of her thoughts. She once wrote this, and I find it really fitting for us today. She said, "When a train goes through a dark tunnel, you don't throw away your ticket and jump off. You sit still and you trust the engineer." The engineer, of course, is our good and gracious and loving God who is with us in everything that we encounter. Listen to another thought she once shared. "I prayed to dispel my fear until suddenly, and I do not know how the idea came to me, I began to pray for others. I prayed for everyone who came into my thoughts, people with whom I had traveled, those who had been in prison with me, my school friends of years ago. I do not know how long I continued my prayer, but this I do know, my fear was gone. Interceding for others has released me." It's in the reaching out, not in the hiding away, that we find what we most seek in this life and the next. And so today we decide, which way will we go? Now this parable is pretty clear. It's in our giving, it's in our risking. It is in letting go of our talents to help those around us that we find abundant life in this world and in the world that is yet to come. Maybe one final quote from Corey says it best. Never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God. Please pray with me. God, we thank you that you are love, perfect love, and that you surround us every moment of our lives, that you are here with us, even in the midst of anxieties. Help us, God, to move past them, to find new boldness, new courage, and new strength to step forward in a world that needs so much hope right now. God, you've called us. May you use the talents that you have given us in ways that are glorifying to you and your kingdom. In the name of Jesus, I pray.